All right, good morning and welcome to Safety Leadership webinar presented by Jacob Reynolds and Progressive Safety Management. Today is December 6th. It's Friday, so we're going to go through this. We're going to learn a little bit, have some fun, get through it to our weekend. I have kind of built this webinar out to build on last month's safety culture webinar. So if you haven't seen that yet, make sure you're going back and checking that so you have a good frame of reference. We will kind of go over some of the more important slides just to keep everyone up to date going into the rest of the PowerPoint. So I get my experience mostly with safety culture and leadership through my time spent working at Amazon with their leadership principles, as well as kind of my ideas on the readings of author Peter Drucker. Today we are going to have opportunities for participation. Our primary communication is going to be through the webinar chat box. So if you haven't taken a look at that or you haven't pulled that up yet, feel free, take a couple seconds to get comfortable with it because that will be the main form of communication going into today. So look forward to talking with you guys. We'll just jump right into it. So today's objectives will help us to understand what safety leadership is. We're going to go and talk in what makes a safety leader, what are the values and benefits that a strong safety leader has, and how do you kind of identify who a safety leader is or who has the potential to be a safety leader, and how do we develop them and get them to that point. We'll take that knowledge and we'll kind of do not really a knowledge check, but more a self-evaluation, do a leadership behavioral review and kind of take the strengths and weaknesses from that behavior review and develop a personal leadership plan and kind of build our way up to where we want to be in our development, or at least where we want to see ourselves trending to. So we'll start off simple. So here we can see Webster's definition of leadership and safety. So the action of leading a group of people or an organization, the state of position of being a leader, that is what leadership is. The definition of safety is the condition of being safe from undergoing or causing injury, harm, or loss, or a device designed to prevent inadvertent or hazardous operation. So if we mash those together, we kind of get a good summary together. What we're looking at is a group of leaders that are dedicated to the elimination of unsafe acts, behaviors, and conditions in a workplace setting. The people that you can lean on and go to, not only to help you get your processes and operation complete, but how to do it safely, and they can kind of help guide you through that. Continuing, as we continue to take a look into what safety leadership looks like, I'd kind of like you to either answer the questions or think through the following statements to yourself or on the chat. But what does it take for a leader to be successful, either in safety or just in your standard day-to-day operation? In addition to that, a leader is someone who gives expectations and sets standards and can be looked to, like we mentioned. So start thinking about someone that serves this role in your workplace or maybe at home, or just someone you look up to that stands in that role and you can rely on at any time. And additionally, you have to follow up, and you have to be personable about those follow-ups. When you're trying to be a safety leader and you're trying to go around and remember, hey, who completed this, or what's going on in this person's personal life that they told me about, it can get confusing, and not everyone has a photorealistic mind that they can just go in and pull that picture out and say, oh yeah, I remember that conversation perfectly. So if that's the case, write it down. People really value when you remember their work and personal lives. And I even knew a company owner once who he carried a little black book around everywhere he went. Anytime he had a conversation, he was jotting down any memorable points from those conversations, with whether it be his supervisors, his craft workers, his office workers, And it was anything from, sick parents to wedding engagements, pregnancies, all the way to, kids' first sporting events or getting a new pet. He just wanted to follow up about the work too, for sure, but just to make sure that, hey, people knew that he cared and he was someone that you could rely on and go to in your times of need or time of excitement. Leaders also want to stay ahead of the goal or stay ahead of the curve and have a plan. They're goal oriented. They communicate effectively, and not only do they follow up, but they follow through on their commitments. If they say they're going to do something, you can bet in that little black book that they're writing down what they say they're going to do, not just only what was said to them. They have a plan of action and they're ready to execute it, and they start formulating that as soon as they kind of hear what the problem is and how it needs solved, or the goal of that correction. So the last thing we have on this slide is that you have to go in and make the difference on a daily basis. It has to be consistent. You have to think of it kind of as the platinum rule and the golden rule wrapped up into one. The platinum rule being treat others the way they want to be treated, and the golden rule is treat others the way you would like to be treated. And I think most importantly there, while you're treating people like people, the most important thing is to lead. And if you see something, you have to do something or say something or acknowledge those hazards or, potential injuries or potential near misses and eliminate them before they can become those things and actually harm an associate or do damage to equipment or material. So doing your part. You do have to put in some work to become a good safety leader with desired qualities. While coming to this webinar is a great start, it's not going to be the end all be all, and we're going to kind of walk through that the rest of the way. So when you do become a good safety leader who does have those desired qualities, it gives you the opportunity to shape your project and impart your ethics and values onto others, because you've achieved this level of success that people want to emulate and they want to see spread through the organization. So you're going to be the expert your employees believe you are by staying conscious of your work, the safety implications of that work, and then asking questions when you don't know the answer. A lot of time our employees, our workers come to us and they say, hey, what do I have to do correctly for this ladder to access this, or for this piece of equipment? How do I operate it? What is the right piece of equipment? And what do we need to do it safely? And you might not know the answer. It might be something you work with every day. It might be something you've never heard of in the last 10 years. And it's okay to let those people know you don't know the answer if you're able to go through on the last slide and follow up and follow through. You have to get them the answer, and it has to be the correct answer, and it has to be within a timely manner. And let's just start with something small. If you're removing hazards, as small as just picking up trash off the ground or removing bad extensions cords as you go, and you're walking in a group setting or you're walking with just another coworker, that person's going to emulate you. They're going to copy you because they're going to feel some kind of self-pressure to be like, oh, why am I not picking up trash? Or why didn't I see that extension cord? So that's something else to think of. A small little challenge from me to you is the next time that you are on a site tour, or you're going through a project walk, or you're going to follow up and see how things are progressing, pick up the small pieces of trash, correct hazards as you identify them. It doesn't have to be you necessarily, but maybe call someone to help eliminate the hazard while you continue on your walk. And then just kind of make a mental note of if people are following along with that, or if you're not, because I think that is a good indication of where we might be with our safety leadership and our safety culture in our organizations. So we'll carry on with characteristics of an ideal safety leader. Two authors, Tom Peters and Bob Waterman, spent over a decade writing the book called In Search of Excellence. And what their goal was to try to discover what lies at the core of operational excellence. So they did years of research. They tried to summarize their findings. And what they were able to do was just generate one really powerful sentence. And it was supposed to be delivered directly to, American managers. So figure out your value systems. That's it. Know your values, figure them out, and see where you're going to plug them into your organizational, whether that's a leadership chart or just your day-to-day best practices. So values lie at the core of your leadership and your culture. They're predictors of and ultimate determinants of operational outcomes, and that includes safety and quality at that point. Really, you have to have good safety leaders with good values, or you're not going to have the strong culture, and it's going to lead to failure in safety, whether that comes to OSHA violations, safety incidents that result in injuries or worse. So what does that mean really? I'm sure you guys have heard a variation of this quote at least once, and it's, if we always do what we've always done, we'll always get what we've always had. So that means there's an obvious question is, what do we do and what have we got? So take a second to think about that. What is it, especially in the mindset of a safety leader, what is it that we're doing on our projects or at our companies and saying, we've always done it this way. This is the results we've always gotten. What is it that we've done and what is it that we've gotten and how would we like to change that? Give you guys a couple seconds just to think on that real quick. So now we're thinking about that. Feel free to, continue to think or write it in the chat. Some leadership qualities of either an ideal safety leader in your mind or one that you may know or someone that you look up to already. Just list out some values, ethics, qualities that you think are important in leadership, especially pertaining to safety. So we have one, leads by example, does the right things even when it's hard. On the next slide, we have a good list here. Good communicator, honest, plans ahead, cares, good listener, things we've talked about, team player, approachable, positive attitude, shares ownership. One of the things I like to say is takes less of the credit that they deserve and more of the fault. But these are good things to think of and strive towards, good qualities that you aspire to have when you're developing your own safety leadership plan. So these are the slides we kind of went over in the safety culture webinar to a great extent. That was a primary part of that webinar. And like I said, I really encourage you guys to go out and check that out. We are going to do a much briefer slide overview for those of you who weren't able to attend or haven't seen that yet. So keep in mind that a leadership team with low expectations and minimal values will have a safety culture with greater opportunity to improve, and vice versa. When you're already nearing something that you consider world class, it's going to be hard to move up incrementally to get to that higher tier of world class. Whereas someone maybe at the lower management level of safety culture will have opportunities to improve quickly and vastly right at the get-go. So like I said, we're just going to go over these slides pretty quickly. SWAMP is safety without any management process. Safety responsibilities are not recognized. They're rejected and perceived as a burden. Management characteristics that stand out here are people say accidents are a fluke, autocratic style. They have minimal planning. Communications are all fear-based. Minimal employee involvement. They're not asked. They're not considered. Adversarial relationships. You don't want to see your boss. Your boss doesn't want to see you. You don't want to have the conversations. And you might say that the person in charge of that is very old school or has a hard edge to them. And it has organizational impacts. They all do. It's going to lead to higher insurance costs, excessive losses through injury or equipment or downtime. And we go into that a little bit later as well. You're going to have those poor employee relationships where, we talked about you're not going to talk to your boss, and then operate in violation of recognized regulations. You're going to have a blatant disregard for laws set in place by OSHA, the EPA, or what have you. The next one, where we're going up a step, we're getting a little bit better, is the norm. Naturally occurring reactive management. So in this one, safety responsibility is accepted, but it's not understood. People know that there's a safety responsibility, but they don't know what their role is in that. And still, the company doesn't perceive it as anything more than a cost. They're not going above and beyond to meet the needs of the employees of the workplace. They're only going out and spending money where they have to get the job done in their minds. So management characteristics here include, we can excuse accidents away as fault-based instead of saying, hey, these can be prevented every time. We're going to do what's easy. We're going to throw money at things only when we need to throw money at things, and the rest we're going to let skate. High visibility with many labels, but there's little results. They have the good programs. They have, all the PPE, and they have the flashy safety setup and signature from the CEO on the safety promise at the front of the building. But you get in and you start working and you don't see what they're advertising, which makes it so that there's programs and campaigns that are popping up all the time, but they're short-lived and have very little buy-in from the supervisors, from the workforce. And this can kind of be seen, if the last one was old school, this is kind of old school versus modern safety. They pull from both and find limited success, but more so than that SWAMP management process. So the organizational impacts here, it says blood cycles, turnover, committees. You're going to have tons of committees, just like the programs and campaigns, where you're going to try and get people bought in, and you're going to try and find the right person, but they're going to lose interest, or they're not going to be the right person. They're going to fall off, and the committee won't have meetings and will be unsuccessful. Committees can be successful and they can be helpful, but the idea behind it right here is it's just a quick fix that we're throwing at the wall, which leads us to the next one, is quick fix programs. What can we throw money at? What can we fix right away? And no valid effort put into making it a sustainable program. It's just, we have to get rid of what's in front of us, what's on our plate right now, as quickly as possible. So that leads us into world class. This is the desired outcome of anybody's safety leadership when they're working toward the safety culture. So there is safety responsibility in world class culture. It's manager driven and employee owned, and it's perceived as a good business investment. We're going to put money into safety first to save us money on the back end with injuries, insurance costs, and what have you. These management characteristics include the idea that accidents can and should be prevented, that we're continuously planning for safety. Roles and responsibilities are clearly identified up front, and everyone knows what is expected of them going into a job task. We already mentioned employee ownership, but the employees know what their those roles are now, and they know what it takes to complete those, and they take pride in completing those objectives. Um, there's communication, and it's encouraged instead of fearing from your boss or dodging that coworker. You look forward to meeting them when they call you to the office, or when you meet up at the water cooler or in the break room. Uh, and then efforts are measured and they're responded to. There's corrective actions put into place, and from the time that they are generated to the time that they are completed, they are documented and followed up on, constantly being brought up in either discussion or meetings, or as evaluations for where a particular person is in the week for their work. Organizational impacts here include a zero accident concept truly being a reality, progressive employee involvement, where we're constantly looking for sustainable ways to pull employees and workers in and keep them involved and talking about safety, and then walking our talk. I'm sure it's a pet peeve of many of you that when someone says something, they're talking, they never say, or they never do what they say. And that kind of takes it back to the little black book a little bit. You have to follow up, you have to follow through. So we're going to take another kind of 30 seconds just for you guys to kind of think briefly where your organization or project might fall and where they're currently functioning based on those safety cultures. In the swamp, in the norm, world class, or do you fall somewhere in between? Mind you, if you're in the swamp, you have an opportunity to improve vastly and quickly. World class, that's amazing, you're doing great. There's going to be minor changes that can be made, but you can't go higher than world class. So go ahead, take that 30 seconds, and we'll see what everyone thinks. Feel free to throw it in the chat or just think it in your head. All right, I hope that was enough time for you guys to kind of formulate an opinion as we were going through the slides, and as we got to this landing slide, where you are at with your projects or work. So continuing with a similar idea of just the self-evaluation, this is the DuPont Bradley curve. It identifies 4 different stages of safety leadership or culture and where they're at in their maturity. And it starts at reactive, works its way through dependent, independent, all the way down to interdependent. So in that reactive stage, I'm not going to read it all to you, but you guys can see people don't take responsibility, and they believe accidents will happen because of that. The dependent stage, people view safety as following rules. The accident rate decreases because they might have a respect for those rules, but they still are expecting accidents to happen. The independent stage, people take responsibility and believe they can make a difference with their actions. Accidents are further reduced. You start getting those sustainable plans and the follow through on the corrective actions, all the way until you get to the interdependent stage, where the team feels ownership and responsibility for safety, culture, and leadership. They believe 0 injuries is an attainable goal. So someone in that interdependent stage is probably also in that world-class stage as well. So just like we did with world-class, swamp, and norm, I know this was a little bit briefer, but go ahead and just kind of think where you are on this DuPont Bradley curve and where you would like to be, and just take a minute to kind of absorb this graphic because it has a lot of good information on it. So this is a good quote on the value of safety leadership from DuPont and from the Bradley curve. And I'll read through it for you because I think it's important. But different leadership is required today to effectively move an organization along the Bradley curve to achieve interdependence and to successfully integrate the EHS processes. This leadership requires less over-the-shoulder management of employees and more freedom for smaller groups of individuals to work independently on tasks. Employees then increasingly assume a mindset and behavior of being a leader as opposed to needing a leader. High levels of organizational success come from such a combination of formal and shared leadership. In fact, shared leadership enables organizations to progress along the Bradley curve more rapidly. The more leadership that workers assume and demonstrate across various teams within the organization, the more interdependency is achieved to enhance EHS as well as other functions. For organizations to capitalize on this trend, managers must first recognize the need to change their own approach towards leadership. Hierarchical mindsets towards leadership are still deeply ingrained in today's business culture. Successful managers will recognize that their traditional roles are evolving and begin to encourage shared leadership within their organization, in effect becoming change agents themselves, which is great. We want to move along that Bradley curve. We want to get to the world class, and we want to develop our safety leaders. So now that we know what safety leadership is, and we've brushed up on safety culture, and we kind of know what direction we want to be heading in from where we're at, how do we get our leaders thinking with the correct mindset for achieving that success? So it starts with, in my opinion, instilling responsibility. People grow when they are challenged and vocally self-critical, which is why it's important to continuously conduct self-assessments of our leadership values and develop sustainable plans to guide our way to self-improvement. Once we have these values and plans figured out, we can use them to create a leadership model based around these principles. And once you have that leadership model, you use it for yourself and for your future leaders, and you kind of use it as a beacon to follow or strive for, something to benchmark yourself against every day, where we say, hey, this is our Mount Rushmore. How are we going to climb it? How are we going to achieve it? And then once we're there, where are we going to plant our flag? So when you have roles and responsibilities, it's important for each employee to know and understand the expectations given to them, whether that's initially or on a daily basis or for the duration of the project. And I would encourage it to be all three. This also can serve as a tool for job evaluation. Excuse me. When you're evaluating an employer, you're evaluating a supervisor, you can bring to them their roles and responsibilities and the expectations you set for them and be able to kind of measure where they're at. Continuing with that, and how we're going to do that is, we have to benchmark to industry best practices. We have to rely on our past experiences. We have to look to our competitors or our sister companies and see what they're doing differently that we should be doing and we should be implementing. I flip-flopped a little bit on committees because I said committees can be a bad thing, but they also can be a really good thing if they're sustainable and there's a plan of action for meetings and for those committees to accomplish. If you put things out in front of them and they can get them accomplished for your organizations, they are a good thing. So you do want to rally a group of passionate employees is the key to meet on either a predetermined basis or whether that's once a week, once a month, and what you need them to do is champion safety at that point in time. We also put out a webinar earlier in 2019 on implementing a safety committee and the benefits. So if you'd like more details on what a good safety committee is, please check that out. I highly encourage it. So also developing leaders, we have to write down what we're going to do and make sure it gets done and write that down too. So the key there is documentation. If you don't have a goal and there's no plan and there's no steps to get to that goal, it's not going to happen. Things aren't going to change. because one, you're not even acknowledging where you're at to know where you need to be. So that is a challenge that is going to be overcome with some of the tools we present to you here at the end of the webinar. But that being said, you can't fix what you don't know. And you have to set your own bar. You have to set an expectation and maintain that with internal auditing documentation. So we're going to further develop leaders. Once you're developing the leaders, the goal is a drive to zero accidents and a commitment to safety. And that's where those core values come in. The drive has to be highly visible and evident in our leadership behaviors. Self-criticalness and development is important here. You can use safety posters, signs, and announcements to promote recent success or make workers aware of present hazards. And that's really going to get more of a buy-in just because they're seeing it more frequently. They're hearing about it more frequently. A critical component of our safety leadership is that we're continuously striving to enhance employee involvement or ownership and leadership in all aspects of our safety performance. Promoting safety will help, behaving safely as leaders will help, and developing the culture through those two things will also help. So we truly want people to be safe at work, and if we promote it enough at work, we can get them to be safe at home, and then it just becomes a habit, a part of their lifestyle that they continue on with, hopefully for the rest of their lives. And then the last thing we have on here is a personal leadership plan, is an effort to increase our personal commitment to safety. This is going to be done through the completion of a self-assessment here at the end of the webinar, where you'll have to have an acknowledgement of your leader's strengths and weaknesses, and then there'll be an opportunity for them to address them in a written plan where they'll set goals on how they want to become a greater safety leader, or just a greater leader in general. So now that we kind of talked about leadership, culture, and how we could develop those and build those up, it was mentioned briefly, but it's important to understand it. One of the key reasons to why this is important, right? There's costs in business associated with safety. So whether you have good leadership and culture or bad leadership, this culture will influence the amount of injuries you see. And really, I like to say that the choice is yours. It can be a cost or it can be a savings opportunity. So the cost of accidents is an area of major concern for many employees, right? Or employers. Many people don't realize how much accidents really do cost. Many expenses are not always obvious either. You can see the direct costs, what we immediately think of, versus the indirect costs on the screen. So safety leaders with an attention to safety behavior and loss control can improve a company's overall success. So one of the other questions is, we have these costs or potential savings, but where does this money come from to pay for the results of accidents or incidents? Some people think that just because we have money set aside, that we're going to put those towards the accident costs, but all of you who are employers know that that money comes directly out of our profits, which is nothing we ever like to see. So a series of costly accidents can really reduce profits radically. Accidents have the obvious direct costs that we see here, the medical, hospital, rehabilitation expenses, workers' comp, and higher insurance premiums, or even the loss of insurability if you take enough of these injuries. But the less obvious, the indirect costs, ones that are usually uninsured also, include various disruptions to normal work procedures after an incident, like when an employee stops to help an injured employer or during the accident investigation time, the drop in productivity that causes inconsistencies with the delivery of your promises or your product, or and then if profits are insufficient to cover the cost, the company might be forced to defer the procurement of new equipment or facilities, or they might not be able to bid on that next project. You know, in our head, as leaders or just people in general, often try to minimize the cost of accidents by saying they're covered by insurance or they have that money set aside, but insurance only covers a portion of total accident costs. We don't want to come out of the profit. And, you know, as accident losses increase, a company's insurance premiums are going to increase. The total amount of profit is going to decrease. So it is clear that directly and indirectly, accidents just reduce our profitability overall, which is something we totally want to avoid and can avoid by instilling good morals and ethics in the safety leaders so they can develop and drive that safety culture and reduce those overall injuries, saving us or turning the costs into savings. This is a nice little tool I like to just throw on here. It's called Safety Pays. It's from OSHA. They have a quick little message. Have you ever thought about how much a workplace injury could cost your business? The OSHA Safety Pays tool is an online calculator that uses data on workplace injury costs compiled by the National Council on Compensation Insurance to calculate the direct and indirect costs to your business. The tool allows you to select from 40 types of injury and illness, in addition to showing you the direct and indirect costs of each injury. The tool calculates the additional sales revenue your business would need to generate to cover these costs. The results might surprise you, and exploring the tool will help you appreciate the value of implementing a safety and health program and instilling safety leadership values. So this is just a neat little tool. I like to throw it out there. There's a link on the slide you guys can see if you want to jot that down. There's also a really neat graphic on here from the Safety and Health magazine that just kind of gives you more of an idea of how many of what types of injuries are occurring and how much they're costing as well. So we've talked a lot about safety leadership and safety culture and kind of the development, where we're at and where we want to go. So we have included a self-assessment. It will be sent out via email at the conclusion of the webinar. Once the self-assessment is complete, what we want to do is focus on strengths to strengthen and weaknesses to be cognizant of while creating a plan of action, which is included in the assessment to kind of develop our safety leadership skills. So we want to think about what kind of values we want to instill in our leadership practices, and we want to think about how we're going to guide our business to its desired safety culture. So that world class and the lowest point on the DuPont Bradley curve. So we also want to consider the number of injuries and the cost of those injuries that will occur with a less than exceptional safety leadership team guiding the culture, because really if we put the costs up front, it's going to be a savings in the long run to get the sustainable program, sustainable corrective actions in place. So aside from the self-assessment, which is on there, I've kind of pulled out and just highlighted some nuggets for you guys to take away, for you to build on, something to think about maybe with your own operation teams. But on slide 5, we mentioned just doing your part with the safety walk. Next time you guys go out on a walk or a tour of the site, or you're just walking from point A to point B with another coworker or an employee, do your part, pick up trash, correct hazards as you go, and you'll be surprised how quickly they kind of emulate your behavior and actions in that situation. On slides 6 and 8, we talked about who your ideal safety leader is and what kind of good leadership qualities they have in your head. And then we posted up and we said, hey, this is what we think some good safety leadership qualities, values, ethics are that we would like to see in our leaders. On slide 9 through 15, we talked a lot about safety culture and what kind of safety culture exists on your workplace. Again, I highly encourage you to check out the safety culture webinar for a more in-depth discussion on those safety management practices, safety culture management practices. And kind of determine as a group where you think your organization is and where you think you want to go and how you're going to get there. We also included the Safety Pays calculator from OSHA, just something fun to mess around with. get a good idea of what an injury would cost, kind of make it more prevalent or more aware if you're trying to take this home and use it to develop a safety culture. You can kind of have more of a backing to say, hey, this is what it's going to cost if we do take an injury. This is why we need to install safety leadership and develop a safety culture. And then the last thing on here was slide 21, the self-assessment and personal leadership plan, which I did tell you guys will be sent out at the end of the webinar for you to review. I think these are all good things for you to take away, at least to think about, maybe discuss with coworkers, with supervisors, with your employees. And it's going to get you on the right track to developing your safety leaders to get you to your desired culture. At this point in time, if there are any questions, we'll open it up through the chat. Haven't had too much participation so far during the meeting, but this is your guys' chance. If you have questions or comments, open it up for a minute, see if anybody has anything to say. The PowerPoint, the question is, can we get a copy of this PowerPoint? The PowerPoint is made available as a webinar after we're concluded. No problem, sir. All right, well, we will cut it for questions at this point in time. But I do want you guys to know that we do have our first topic for the 2020 schedule set in stone already. We're going to go over record keeping. 'Tis the season. However, the survey will still be sent out one more time, and any topics can still be sent to my glorious boss, Mr. Dan Deller at ddeller@progressivesafety.com. If there's any one subject matter you would really like to hear covered in 2020, this is going to be your best opportunity and potentially your last opportunity to have your voice heard through the month of December. So we really want you guys to be getting the information that you want to hear. We want to be providing you nuggets of information that are pertinent to your workplace. That's why we're doing record keeping to start off the year, because like I said, 'tis the season. It's going to be on everybody's plate and everybody's mind. So I just want to thank you guys for joining me today. Excellent way to start my Friday. I'm going to give you some of your time back, let you go enjoy some lunch. I hope you have a great rest of your day and enjoy your weekend. Just keep an eye out for this to be posted when it's done in the email for this or the development plan. All right, thank you all.